Well, hey, kids, dreamers, and jammers. Welcome back to another Park Streamers Hangout. I hope you guys are ready for an absolutely incredible show. It is a special Father's Day edition, and we will have a father and son on with us that will probably have you guys salivating to hear more from them other than just our little podcast here. But we're going to be diving into some really cool stuff with them. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce my co-hosts. I've got Cordy in California and Barry Place 28 with me. Cordy, would you let the folks know where they can find you?
Hello, everyone. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitch, and Discord.
Awesome. And our own Barry Place 28, who is now smashing past 11,000 subscribers. Congrats, my friend. Would you let all of those 11,000 people out there know where they can find you, other than YouTube, obviously?
Sure. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook.
Awesome. And I am Theme Park Casual. You can find me on YouTube, X, and Instagram, all of them at Theme Park Casual. Let's go ahead and greet some of the folks in the chat real quick before we bring our guests in. Who do we have with us tonight?
We have got Kayak Sanchez. Hello. Reply by mail. Monorail Molly, welcome. Kelly DiMaggio, Weird Old Man. Mike. We got Karen E. We got
EXP626, Peter. We got Haunted Mermaid. We got Barbara Duncan. Kate.
We got Spaceship Ears.
Right, we do have Spaceship Ears. Chad Pritchard, Lyndon.
We've got Kate. We've got Peter. Did somebody say Barbara Duncan? Barbara Duncan's with us.
Paul M. Newitt.
Izzo's Place.
Sorry.
Yanka. Adventures of the Road to Commish.
Lamont Gray.
Tammy Delaney.
Pete McDevitt Show. Hello.
Pirate Queen Twish is with us. Mm-hmm. And Daryl Chin, welcome in.
Lamont Gray. Mike Smith.
Did we get Izzo's Place? We've got Izzo's Place with us too. My goodness, it's good to see all of you guys in here. Like I said, we've got a fantastic show. I think we're going to... Oh, we got Carol G and the Corn Dogs. Welcome in. I think we're going to jump right into this, and let's get our guests on screen with us so we can start the discussion. Courtney, would you mind letting us know a little bit about John DeCuir Jr.?
Actually, that was me.
Oh, you're doing Junior. Oh, I thought, all right. I had that wrong. My bad. All right. So, Bob, would you let us know?
Sure. So, Don DeCuir Jr. is an architect, film designer, and adjunct professor. And he literally took his first steps on the soundstage and later assisted his father on 3 Oscar-winning films. Excuse me. John worked as an art director on a 5-year London-Rome production of Cleopatra. And after completing his graduate work at the University of Southern California, he next took on designing Spaceship Earth and Communicore Hall for Disney Imagineering. In 1980, John founded Cinematix. Oh, wait, is that right? Wait, Cinematix. Oh, how do we say that? Cinematix. There you go. I knew how to say that. Boy, one too many pain pills. There we go. And contracted for the design and fabrication of film sets, which included Top Gun, Ghostbusters, Sister Act 2, Turner and Hooch, and theme park films such as Jim Henson's 3D Muppet movie, Alien Encounter, and Epcot's Energy Pavilion. John has lectured and taught at the UCLA Performing Arts Program, USC's School of Cinema, and the American Film Institute. He currently teaches graduate classes on the art and architecture of storytelling at Asbury University School of Communication Arts.
That is an impressive resume.
It is. I had a hard time reading it.
I know. All right. And we also have his son, John D. DeCuir. Cordy, would you let the folks know a little bit about John D?
Of course. So John D is a software engineer, a tech geek, and Disney fan, just like all of us, living life in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. He goes by the username Spaceship Ears, which you're all familiar with, in the Disney community, and hosts the new YouTube channel Grand and Miraculous, which focuses on the design and effectiveness of theme park attractions. He grew up here in Los Angeles, effectively growing up in Disneyland, where he gained his love of theme parks and Disney in particular. After living a few years in San Diego, working in the robotics industry, he moved to the Pacific Northwest in 2006, where he lives there today. He has 2 almost grown children, one of which is pursuing her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Digital Art and Animation, carrying on the family tradition.
Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John DeCuir Jr. and John D. DeCuir.
Awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. It is an honor to have you guys here.
I have to do my bow. So thank you so much.
Oh, gosh.
That's it.
I just hope we don't chase those 11,000 hits away tonight.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Okay.
All right. So we obviously heard an incredible, bio of John DeCuir Jr. What is it like to have worked on some of these films that, as I was mentioning earlier, they become part of the fabric of our culture, our society? Movies like Ghostbusters and Top Gun, and the beloved, Muppet Vision 3D at the parks. How does it feel to be a part of something like that? Because that's got to feel. I don't even know how it would feel, honestly.
Well, it all started so many years ago that one gets a little bit taken away by the whole thing, and in a way used to it. But literally, I did grow up on a movie stage, a motion picture stage, a sound stage. I remember that my first notion about what it was all about was when I went to prison with Burt Lancaster. And literally on the set of Brute Force. And I was just a little toddler guy, and Burt had to lift me up, and so I could pull that big lever that opened the prison gates. And at that moment, I was hooked. And I felt that there was some magic going on in this world that I couldn't really leave. I did spend some years being trained and educated as an architect, but it was pretty hard to settle into designing office buildings when your dad was dancing with Elizabeth Taylor in Rome.
Yeah.
And so, so I didn't spend too long in that world. I pretty much immediately went to work at WED, Wood Enterprises. It was my first job, but after apprenticing for almost 15, 20 years on various films, I have a little book I'm working on called Travels with Dad, and that in effect is what I did. My autobiography is in effect his story too, because I traveled around with him and working on these various films. But the magic of it all is when those prison gates open. I think that the whole thing for me is promoting and developing and being as good as I can at helping this whole idea of audience immersion, of audiences immersing into the narrative and into the story. And while in the movies, that's one of our prime objectives, is to create those narrative worlds, because you can't enter or immerse into something unless there is an exciting narrative world to immerse into. And so while dealing with the plot and the protagonists and the mission are critically important, I've always felt that building the world around all that activity was essential. And then when I bumped into my experience at Disney, and for the first time I saw Walt putting people in the entertainment, physically putting them in the story. Wow. That was an amazing sort of eye-opener for me. So that transition from film to theme park was not only easy for me, it was exciting. Although my my introduction was a little bit anonymous. I'd come out of the Coast Guard, and I was looking for a job, and I was going through the newspaper, and I saw this little ad, and it said, graphic artists needed. And I thought, well, I should be able to do that. And it had some funny little letters behind it, WED. Now, you're going to think I was pretty naive, but I had no idea what WED stood for. And so I went through the interview and got the job. And my dad said at dinner that night, he said, well, how did it go? And I said, well, it's pretty good, but they're not paying me much, you know. I said, I was making a little more in the Coast Guard than I'm making here. And he said, well, what is this company? And I said, it was WED. And he started to laugh. And he said, don't you know where you went to interview? And I said, well, yeah, it's a graphic company in Burbank. He said, no. He said, Disney theme park design company whose president is a good friend of mine. So he said, let me make a phone call. The fellow who interviewed me called me then 48 hours later, and he was a little upset, to say the least. He said, why didn't you tell me you knew the president of the company? Now they all want you to come down and show them your work. Well, anyway, that's how I was introduced to WED. Sort of, somebody must have been pushing me in the right direction.
Oh, very cool. Now,
I spent the next 10 years having a wonderful time, and taking some of that motion picture world building and applying it to an environment where I was wrapping real people, real audiences in that world, and not just asking them to look at it on the silver screen.
Yeah. Now, you're credited as production designer on a lot of these films. Could you let everybody know exactly what that is? I was able to listen to your discussions, the videos that you have on the Asbury website. So I got to already hear what your thoughts are, but let's have everybody understand exactly what the production designer does and what you mean by, building these worlds around the actors and the stories.
Well, there's a lot of history to that because for so many years in the motion pictures, that name didn't exist. My father for years and years was called an art director, as were almost all of the other designers that designed for film. And it was only until William Cameron Menzies came along and did Gone with the Wind and decided that he was a lot more than just a set designer and a set builder, that he was literally designing the entire movie, and concocted that name, production design. Where the idea being that we really are not just building and designing sets, but we're building narrative worlds. And that's what Menzies did so well. He was a world builder for the entire film. And that was a pivotal point in the industry, because then people like my father struggled hard to get the studios to recognize that he was really doing production design work and wanting to change that name. Lyle Wheeler, he's one of those guys right there that was a problem, because he was a supervising art director and he didn't want people being production designers at all. He wanted to maintain. And then prior to, I would say, in the 50s, the supervising art director was like the head of an architectural firm, and he had sometimes a dozen art directors working for him, working on various films. So the supervising art director was the head guy, and he wasn't too anxious to give up that authority and that power. My father had a rough time. The first picture that he was promised the production design credit on was The Robe, and there was such a contractual problem with that his name didn't even appear on the screen. He went through several pictures like that, Island in the Sun, where he didn't get credit at all, because there was this contractual argument going on about what a production designer was. But just to sum it up, production design really is certainly a lot more than building movie sets. It's designing worlds for the film, and those worlds are essential to immersing the audience and telling the story. If our goal is suspension of disbelief and immersing our audience in the story, then the worlds that we build are essential and critical, and have to be certainly tuned to perhaps first and foremost the protagonist. I mean, one question that always pops up is, who owns this set? Who owns this world? And it's not really my choice or my particular criteria that I like pink or red or green or blue in terms of designing a world or an environment or set. Who's the protagonist? Who is the owner of that set? What color would they choose? What object would they hang on the wall? What furniture would they buy? And so unless the production designer becomes intimately connected with the story and the protagonist and the hero of that, say, that particular world, that set, you really can't be designing a good set, because those decisions have to be made based on the story and based on the person who, for lack of a better word, owns that set. It might not be a person. It might be a corporation. It might be if Hitchcock is doing North by Northwest and we're looking at the president's faces, then that set is really owned by a principle and fundamental. But that's I think what a good designer will do, production designer will do. He'll go into the story and he'll look for motivations for making decisions about what that world, that set needs to be.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found interesting when I was listening to your videos. I was like, the way you put it, that, like you just said, who owns this set? And it made me think of all the Indiana Jones movies where, when Indy is in his adventure garb, everything looks a certain way. But then when he's Professor Jones at the universities, everything kind of shifts, but it's still, like you were saying, it's basically owned by Indy because he is, who the movie's about. But
his personality shifts,
Right.
between the jungle and his office, and that's why understanding those personality shifts is critical.
Right, and
Every once in a while in his office, I think if you'll see a little bit of the jungle is creeping in here and there,
yeah,
because that's part of him.
right. But and I find it interesting because a lot of times when we're watching the films and getting into the stories and things, we forget that just about every single thing you see on screen is there deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody has, like when you see Indy's office, a lot of the trinkets, the papers, the books, those were selected specifically for that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget that, somebody has really, the great production designers, they go into that type of detail and say, like you were saying, what kind of books would Indiana Jones have? What kind of, wallpaper would be up on the walls for a room that, Dolly Levi walks into?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that fascinating because when we look at these movies, we think, oh my gosh, they're so amazing, they're brilliant, and all this stuff, but we forget how meticulously put together the really great films are.
Well, there's two areas there that I think are really interesting in terms of what you just brought up. Dad used to say, if you took away what we did, you'd end up with naked actors in a parking lot. And I don't agree with that completely, but yeah, creating what you see behind and around the actor, and even the clothes on the actor, production designer should have his fingers into all of that, and then that leads you to, can one person make all of those decisions? And probably the answer is no, and that leads you to the incredibly important focus you have to have on the art department, the team that production designer puts together, the set decorator, and sometimes it's out of department. The unions and department structures create situations where the production designer is not necessarily completely in charge of the costume work, but boy, we have a close relationship. And there is no really great production designer that isn't almost daily working with his costume designer, or the costume designer. And then the set decorator, of course. So, not to belabor that, but the team that's put together to do just what you were suggesting is a pretty amazing event, is critical. So the art department is a huge, big piece of the puzzle that makes it all come together. And in a way, WED and WDI are sort of big art departments.
And to that point,
You know,
Danny, if I could jump in for a second, we recently, I think it was a year or two ago, we unearthed a lecture that my grandfather, Dad's dad, gave at the Academy. And he goes into great detail about what exactly production design is. And it's not, you would first think, oh, grand sets and things like that. Of course, that's part of the picture, but he goes into the detail and he says, what's the color of the tie that person's wearing? What do they have in their pocket? All of that is encompassed by production design.
One of his favorite, sorry, excuse me, John.
No, go ahead.
One of his favorite ways to approach a problem was, he said, always start with black. When you're designing a set, designing something, and then bring the pieces in one at a time into this void, into this blackness. And as you do that, those pieces are either going to work together or they're going to start to contradict one another. And that's when you can begin to make the decisions of yes, that belongs here, or no, that doesn't. But just building on what John said, the idea of dealing with every particular element, but perhaps assembling it in a way where the designer can make choices and eliminate the contradictions. My good old friend and boss, John Hench, that was one of his fundamental, criteria in design, was always talking about rooting out the contradictions and eliminating the contradictions in a design. And that then says, how do you determine what is a contradiction? And then it gets back to this idea of are you creating a balance, a parity between the protagonist and the mission and the world that's all taking place in? And just like we said, how do you know what picture to hang on the wall? Well, if it's not copacetic to the person who owns that set, then it starts to become a contradiction. Those are the kind of things that I think designers of environments and narrative worlds are constantly on the lookout for.
Now, we do want to make sure that everybody knows that you do have the Asbury University. You have the courses that you teach there. Bob, do you have that website?
Yeah, I'm going to bring it back up.
Well, like I said, I was. Oh, go ahead.
There just came a time when, in the field, production design is that kind of heavy lifting. Got to the point where, and I had been given so many wonderful opportunities to learn things over the years, that I just thought it was time for a little payback, a little pay forward. And that's why we've been spending so much time, literally over the last 10 years, focusing on teaching and hoping that we can encourage young designers to do great things and create great narrative worlds.
Yeah, it's even just like I said, these little snippets that we have here of the 5 pillars. I recommend all of you guys go check out the website. We'll have the link in the chat here in a moment. But be sure to go check this out. Listen to the 5 pillars, and you will suddenly be watching movies completely different just from these little snippets of discussion of learning a little bit about production design. And you're going to start to the movies are going to have so many more layers for you when you watch them now. And that's I find that exciting because I'm a designer, and so I love looking and hearing about those, like you're saying, the choices that are made. And I always try to remind my viewers, there's a difference between art and design. And design, it's choices and has to serve a purpose and a function. And that's why, like you said, you got to remove those contradictions, because then it starts to leave the audience wondering what exactly is the purpose and the function of these items, this scene, this whatever. So definitely go check it out, guys. It is you will love it, and it's not a long investment of time. They're going to be fun little snippets.
I appreciate it, Danny. One of the things my grandfather said, and my dad will buttress that, is someone needs to go in and write the book, because he went into a field that was relatively nascent, and he was unable to find a Bible, so he had to go create his own book. He had to go create his Bible. And I think that's one of his regrets, was that he never actually created the book. So I'm grateful for what Dad is doing. I'm grateful for this interview, because this is going to add to the corpus of all of this stuff out there.
Well, and I think that all of you are doing that in a way when you're writing that book, because you're one of Dad's hopes was that we would go into all of these films and pull out the little magic moments, pull out the guys crawling up the nose of one of the presidents, and and the whole long list, and then let's put those up on the wall. Let's put up those magic moments. Let's create a book, as John was saying, of magic moments that the young designer can just kind of dive into and page through. So that's one area that we're working on, and the other is the whole issue of drawing, of this mystical, magical thing of putting three-dimensional worlds on a flat two-dimensional surface, which has been going on since the first caveman scratched on a cave wall. He was, I think, literally, in my anthropological interpretation, he was dragging reality and putting it on his wall. He was, in effect, creating a window that he could look out, in very primitively, that he could look out into a real world of animals and bison and hunters. And I kind of think for the last 50,000 years, that's what we've been doing. And the only thing that really has changed a great deal is our technology. Our technology has been slowly improving, getting better and better. And now the cave wall, now those drawings are kind of moving on our plasma screens in our homes. But there are still pictures on the walls. But uniquely, I think the technology now has moved even another jump forward with Disney's work in terms of really putting audiences inside the entertainment, immersing them in these narrative worlds. And so is there an arc from the cave wall to the holodeck? Yeah, I think so for me. We're a long way off possibly from that, but I can sure see how historically these big moves that have been made. I mean, when the motion picture was invented, if you look, I love to cross territories here, and I was looking the other day and reading about Picasso, who was a great movie fan. And if you look at Picasso's paintings about how he'll approach a face from 2 or 3 different perspectives in one image, and I just have to believe that was his interpretation of the movie camera, moving around an object and seeing it from various points of view. So, when the motion picture camera came and images began to move, wow, what a breakthrough. And I think the Disney work today is another breakthrough. And it's kind of fun to just historically look at those moments.
Well, you can't tell the story without Disneyland being a centerpiece of that arc. I mean, Walt did was that he literally put people into the movie, walking up Main Street, all of the analogy of entering a movie theater is right there. When you enter under the tunnel, you have the coming attraction posters on the side. You walk up Main Street and eventually the scene opens up. So it's very literally like walking into a movie.
Yeah.
And that's something Dad and I talk constantly about is how in the world did Walt pull this off? Where it's the first real instance of someone walking into a movie set.
But I think that, everybody talks about it. It was filmmakers doing it. So they had that discipline. And that's actually what I would like to discuss with you guys now is you worked on basically what I would consider that next jump in the theme park industry, which was Epcot. And we know Walt had a vision of Epcot being a fully functional city. He wanted it as a, experimental place. Corporations and the visionaries to be able to come up with ideas and let them be put into play. What we ended up with is a little bit different, but for people of my generation, kids that grew up at the time that I did, Epcot was mind-blowing. And I didn't get to go there until I was in my 20s. But even as a child, I would be just enthralled learning about this incredible place that had so much to it. And I'm now getting to talk to somebody that was there on the ground blazing that trail, which is just mind-blowing for me right now. But what was that like to looking back on it? Like I said, to me, this was that next jump where the themed industry took a gigantic risk, and in my opinion, it paid off tremendously. And I really wish we could have the same visionaries working on theme parks again, because there was something I can't even explain it. I would just love to hear your thoughts of what it was like working with Marty Sklar, John Hench, Ray Bradbury to get that park, to what it was.
Well, it was both exciting and it was a little scary because Walt had just passed away, and the entire organization was so dependent upon his leadership and his direction. And I had just come aboard, but that particular time, you had to, I think, go back and trace where Walt had been. He had been to the New York World's Fair and created the Carousel of Progress, and you could start there. And I think that sort of sparked his imagination in terms of where we have been, where we are, and where we're going. And if you recall, when that show moved to Disneyland, there was the City of Tomorrow, was the finale, was the last act. And so that early, clearly he had ambitions to be dealing with better ways of living. That's the one phrase that just keeps coming up over and over and over again. And it's kind of challenging to understand how a guy who made his fame and fortune making a little mouse move could at the same time be dreaming about better ways of living in cities of the future. Wow. But one of the things we did was to go back and sort of trace Walt's history, recent history, in terms of his involvement in these world fairs and involvement in this City of Tomorrow concept and idea. And then, of course, what you just brought up, the idea that, wow, a City of Tomorrow, a brick and mortar community, we're going to really build a city? And the challenge, of course, was that the minute we poured the concrete, it was going to be obsolete because the technology was booming and moving moving forward so fastly. And so there was a real contradiction. How can you build a brick and mortar community of tomorrow? Now, a couple of things were happening there, and you've mentioned Ray Bradbury. So we went back, and one of my first assignments was to do the opening show for Future World. Okay? And it was called Future World Theater. And it was literally an amphitheater, nothing like Spaceship Earth at that point. And the challenge was that there was no ride system that they could create that would handle the capacity of the arrival rates of guests coming into the park. And so it meant that if we did kind of a ride show, a lot of the people wouldn't see it as the introduction to the park. And that's where this idea of this big amphitheater came up. And it was almost like a loop show. It would never stop. It would just keep rolling all day long. You could come in and take your coffee and sit and pick the show up just about at any point that you wanted. It was not very linear in that regard. But you saw the whole evolution of communities from early classic Greek, Roman, Egyptian first. You saw these communities morphing and building and growing in this center fully animated show. And the idea being that you could come and visit that show at any point, and it had huge capacity because it would hold the kind of crowds that were coming in. At that point, the decision was made, and that we really they wanted to do more of a ride attraction, and not to this amphitheater idea didn't gel with a lot of people, quite frankly, because it was different. No one had ever done that before. And so we started thinking about Spaceship Earth. We went back. Ray came in, and we have to give him credit for this story. Unfortunately, Roddenberry hadn't done Star Trek, so we only took it to space. We couldn't take it to the holodeck yet. You got to remember where we were in time. And so we started developing. Ray wrote the script, and we started developing that idea. For my part, I went back to the I think it was the '39 World's Fair, the big Paris Fair in the 1939 World's Fair, and I kept seeing the Earth as a architectural direction, and that had a City of Tomorrow kind of aspect to it, the old '39 World's Fair. And at that time, Buckminster Fuller was doing his geodesics. And so it didn't take long for us to connect Ray's story to Bucky Fuller's Spaceship Earth. That's how that name finally came about. And it all sort of congealed in the geodesic. We put the ride system in that. I know John Henson was very concerned about the ball not sitting on the ground. If you know anything about geodesics, they basically spring from a flat plate. And so the temptation is just to lay them on the ground, and you don't have the complete full sphere. And so John worked very hard to make sure that plate was raised up off the ground, and so that the underside of the sphere is a facade, really. It's just sort of hanging in the structure. But it created the illusion. Here we go again with being concerned about this story and the illusion, and not having the contradictory notion of a sphere with its bottom cut off. So that was going fine, and then we Ray and I continued to move on and started working on Communicore, and that's probably a very interesting area to discuss, because the Communicore. Well, the other thing that was happening was that while I was working on this, and they were being quite active on World Showcase. The idea was that World Showcase would come first, that was going to be a lead in to, and eventually then it would buy us enough time to do Future World. Unfortunately, depending upon how you look at it, my crazy plastic models started getting a lot more corporate attention than the international nations cared about their pavilions. The financing just wasn't there for World Showcase in the beginning, and so the decision was made. Well, we've got to start with Future World, and there was so much invested in World Showcase that then the question becomes, now how do these two worlds come together? How do they merge? And we could talk a long time about the various ideas how those two worlds should come together. But the important thing was that they started with both. And Communicore then was to be, Ray Bradbury wanted Communicore to be a stock exchange of new ideas. That's what he called it, stock exchange of new ideas, where people could come. We would build models of these new wonderful ideas, corporate ideas that were on the drawing board but not into production, and then the world would vote. According to Ray, they would all invest their vote in whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, and whether it should be, to give these corporations confidence to move forward. And the problem being that to be able to create those models of new world ideas, you have to remember where the computer was. I mean, the computer existed, what, 8K Atari was kind of what we were working with. Yeah. I just wish if we had had any inkling of what artificial intelligence could do when we were doing Communicore back then. It would have, I think, been a completely different situation. But in any event, Communicore was supposed to be the demonstration center that would then allow the guests to move through the pavilions, through the corporate pavilions, and out into real demonstration centers, a real hospital, a working hospital, a real working airport that would be the cutting edge for airports of the future and hospitals of the future. And that was what Communicore was intended to be. About at that point, I abandoned ship and started my own company. So I can't take any responsibility for what happened to Communicore. But that's just a little taste of what was going on. And clearly Bradbury was a absolutely important, instrumental part of that process.
And I don't know if you guys know, but World Showcase originally was going to be its own park. John Hench's idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, but it was going to be like an airport where you would have this kind of airport terminal aspect, right?
Yeah,
And,
well, I'm not sure whether that was just. I'm not sure the motivation for that, other than the fact that there were architects working on the pavilions, and it did kind of look like an airport because all they had out in front of each pavilion were graphics, flags of the country and signage, but there was really no at that early point there was no hint of architectural facades mirroring the culture of the particular pavilion. And the gentleman you have to give, I think, due homage to that idea was Harper Goff. And Harper came in and was assigned to work on one or two pavilions, and he made this incredible drawing. He was two offices down from mine, so every time I'd walk to get coffee, I could see Harper working on these very fanciful, articulate, architecturally themed facades. And I would have to defer to Tony Baxter. He tells this story so much better, but Card Walker came into Harper's office, and behind Harper were all these drawings of the World Showcase facades as you see them today. And Tony said that Harper was like a spider, sitting in this web of ideas that Card just got completely taken into. And that was the point at which they decided, yes, let's go ahead. Let's do all the facades reflecting the culture and heritage of the country that's being represented. It was just a little. I'm sure somebody would have gotten there anyway. But it's interesting how these ideas evolve and move from point A to point B.
And of course, there's the famous story of the two models coming together because originally they were two different theme parks, and they came together like chocolate and peanut butter. So.
Yeah.
I had a couple sketches that were quite different, but I wasn't. I was kind of new to the company, And there were forces at work there that prevailed, and that's the layout that we ended up with. But, I think today. The power of World Showcase, and John was always convinced about that, John Hench. The power of World Showcase, I think, is quite evident. John and I were there the last time we were there, and the place was teeming, with people who just love to be part of different cultures from around the world. I'm quite surprised there haven't been more little World Showcases popping up around the world. Because I think it's a really powerful concept. I think that also there was one plan where the pavilions, Communicore sat in the center of these pavilions, as if nations of the world had gathered together to announce the Walt's future world. And that was an interesting idea.
I think that would have been an incredible symbolism to have all the countries arrayed around Spaceship Earth within the center. I mean, that's just chef's kiss right there.
Well, anyway, interesting sort of memories.
Yeah. I want to shift gears just a little bit. I want to talk to John D. You just launched recently Grand and Miraculous, which that's a fantastic name, by the way.
Thank you.
Love that name.
I borrowed both my username and that idea and so many other things from this guy over here. So,
well, I was going to say, what was the inspiration for creating the channel and doing it in the style that you're doing it? Because you're doing live stream deep dives into individual attractions, which is not common. Usually those are done in a documentary style, a prepackaged video to do.
Sure.
But you're doing it on the fly, able to interact with your audience. And I think that is a refreshing way to do that. But what was the inspiration?
But no, it's not that bad.
I'm looking forward to where you're going to be next year at this time, because it's.
We'll see. I'm having fun with it. It's I say, it's a labor of love. Yeah.
So, but what was the inspiration for it?
So, as I mentioned on the first episode of the channel, I grew up in the parks. Who cares about me? I want to hear more from Dad. But anyway, I grew up in the parks, and Dad, like every many other families, they went to Disneyland to have fun. Unlike most families, Dad grabbed me and he took me into the park, and we went straight to the exit of the rides. We didn't go to the entrances like most people did. We went to the exits, and he pulled out a stopwatch, and he says, "John, let's figure out what the capacity of this attraction is." And we started counting people coming in and out. And that's where I picked up, oh, okay, so Peter Pan has a little bit more capacity than Adventure Through Inner Space or whatever the case may be. And that's where I started gaining that kind of love and that appreciation of what I call these cultural artifacts. I would put up these attractions against any piece of art in the world, to varying degrees. I just covered Superstar Limo. Maybe we won't cover that one. But in general, I think these are cultural artifacts. They are as close as we can get to modern day holodecks, where they bring you into a story. I wanted to not just do a typical subjective walkthrough of the ride. There's plenty of that, half a dozen out there. What I really wanted to do was kind of cribbing from Dad's 5 pillars. I have my own pillars of what makes an attraction great. Immersion, storytelling, and delight. My assertion is that you've got to nail all 3 to have a world-class attraction. And I go into some detail about that. Some attractions do things better than others. And from my point of view, some people ask me, John, how is it possible that you would want to know all the details about these things? Don't you just want to go and enjoy them? For me, I gain more appreciation knowing how they tick. I was a kid who took everything apart. I would have become an artist myself if this guy hadn't brought an Atari 800 home when I was a little kid. My eyes lit up.
It's not my fault.
Yeah. But I saw that computer. I'm like, oh, that thing's cool. So anyway, I lost my my art interest at that point. But in any case, I've definitely picked up a lot of the love of these cultural artifacts from both my dad and my grandfather. And, I got to know the Disney community, folks like you, a few years ago, especially during the pandemic. And I've had friends who said, John, you're so connected and there's so much you could talk about. You should just start your own channel. I'm like, why not? We'll see how it goes. Like I say, it's a labor of love, and we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. And you kind of gave a little bit of the answer to the question I was going to ask you, but how did your father influence you into a channel like this?
Well, like I mentioned, he really kind of imbued the love of these artifacts into me from a very young age. I just love the idea of going into a place that represented another world and told a different story. Like I mentioned, they're probably the closest things we have to holodecks today. Granted, we're going to get there again eventually in the future with VR headsets and glasses and all this stuff. But for now, they're the best artifacts we have who gets to fly around Peter Pan's island? Who gets to be shrunk to the size of an atom? These are high concept experiences. And from a very early age, both from going to the park, of course, but also from watching Dad and design these incredible sets that he worked on, whether it's Ghostbusters or Top Gun, or even the wonderful little hall he developed in Muppet Vision 3D. I just gained a deep love of these experiences, and I'm happy to share it.
One of the things I really, really like about your show, though, is that you take the time to talk about, the rides in general. You have really good stories that go with it. You have some really good photos, sometimes videos, but then you take the time of telling everyone how you would rate the ride with storytelling, immersion, and delight. And then you allow everyone to go to your site here. And as you can see, you can actually vote and give your own opinion on, how you would rate Superstar Limo by immersion, storytelling, delight. And then, of course, you give everyone a code so they can enter it. But to me, it really drags everyone it immerses them into your channel and what you're telling them. But then it's like, oh wow, I get to say in this. Let me see if what I think compares to what John thinks. And so I think it's really, really neat. And I'm glad that you take the time to do that, because for me, it's one way of getting your channel interactive with your viewers, and I think it's great.
Well, that was very intentional. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. That was very intentional from the beginning. It's super easy to go get a webcam and just spout stuff for an hour. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in trying to figure out how these attractions tick and how they work or don't work in some circumstances. And to me, knowing what I know about how much every single person in this chat right now loves these attractions, and they love what you bring to their computer screen on a regular basis. And I'm endlessly fascinated with that. Why is it that we would all go spend 3 hours in line to go enter a black box for 2 minutes? That's an incredible story for me. And to the degree that I can learn from other people and to figure out communally how it works, I think it's great.
And we also have EXP626 says, I subbed. I want to check out some of the vids.
Well, I'll tell you how it all really started with him. That I put him on my lap in front of an 8K Atari computer, and we played Zork. If
I played Zork back in the day.
Zork, it was a black box that you had to go into and discover all kinds of things. So
you're bringing back memories for me there, John.
Nah.
That's work.
Yeah.
Well, video games too. My daughter is studying the digital arts for video games, and video games are probably the third. With movies and theme parks, video games are probably the third leg of that tripod, where people spend hours and hours and hours in alternative worlds. Now, why is that? There's something to the notion of wanting to escape the current reality and go explore these alternative worlds and stories and things like that. So it's a very strong human nature. And Dad has basically been on the forefront of it. So I'm just tagging along. I'm happy to be here.
No, I applaud the gaming situation too. I think not only are you invited into these worlds, but it's very interactive, where you get to perhaps even more interactive than what's happening in the parks or happening certainly in movies.
Mm-hmm.
So the interactivity of gaming, I think, is something we need to keep our eyes on and watch carefully.
The thing it becomes exponentially difficult to tell a good story the more options you give to the end user. That's one reason why you have these theme park attractions that mostly tell the same story over and over again. Granted, there have been attempts to break that mold. You all remember Horizons and Epcot, where you can choose the ending and things like that. But the more choice that you give the user, the more options and paths that they have to go down the narrative. And you have to make sure as a designer that all of those paths are of high quality. And that becomes very difficult the more options you give. So we'll see how that matures and develops over the coming years.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into some fun discussion. I'm curious for both John Jr. and John D. What is your favorite Disney attraction?
Oh,
doesn't have to be the greatest one, but it's your favorite.
Go ahead, John. You first.
You're putting me on the spot. I've got to say Spaceship Earth. Good Lord.
No. Well, I don't. My favorite attraction, because Ray Bradbury made me go there so many times, is Peter Pan. That was Ray's favorite attraction. And it was something about flying to Never Never Land that just enthralled him and me. Yeah, I think if I had to take one ride home, it would be Peter Pan.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I covered that attraction first. First and foremost, of course, it's his favorite, but also because you never see a drop in that line. That line is constantly full and there's always an hour-long wait. And it's a 2-minute ride through a bunch of blacklit scenes, as simple as can be. But it gives you this experience that you just can't experience anywhere else.
Well, there's a certain level of arguing with gravity in that show. That somehow sitting in a car with wheels on it just doesn't quite give you the same freedom, and immersiveness into the story, in my opinion.
And that's why I wish, we talk about the original Space Pavilion that, my grandfather his dad helped design. Now, this is not Mission Space that currently exists there. This was originally, they had grand plans for a big space pavilion in Future World, where Horizons eventually became. But this thing would have been huge. It would have been basically a immersive trip through space. But they had plans of creating kind of Dad, correct me here, but basically a double-decker circle vision theater that was rotating.
They had taken the circle vision and put it vertically, and then in the openings put two seating areas, so that wherever you looked, 360 degrees, you were seeing out into space. Pretty interesting.
That's pretty cool.
And this thing took off supposedly as you traveled through space. But the interesting part was that there was no contradiction in terms of turning around and seeing the wall of the theater. I mean, you were in the capsule completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was an interesting part of it. The difficulty was technology again. Nobody, and even my old friend Bob Gurr couldn't figure this one out, but God bless him. But at that time, the only technology we had was celluloid going through these big loop cans and rear projection onto these screens. And the rear projection required big distances. And if you can imagine a 360-foot circle with RP screens, because it was decided the projection couldn't be interior. I mean, it just, the old analog system couldn't serve the idea. Now, today, with LED screens, it would be a snap to do. So that's another good example of how an idea might just be a little bit ahead of the technology. It needs to be put on the shelf and maybe pulled down later.
Mm-hmm.
Any of you guys at WDI listening?
They should be. I have a question, John Jr. Is there any project that you wanted to work on at Disney and you didn't get a chance to?
Oh, for me. Yeah, I think in retrospect, I would have liked to spend more time on Communicore. I really would have. I would have liked to nail that one. I think that I had to leave at a time when it was just sort of not well defined. So that was one of my wishes would be to go back and play with Communicore. Yeah. And this spaceship, this space pavilion we just talked about.
Space pavilion, yeah.
That's another one I'd love to play with.
Imagine it with today's technology, if they could put LED screens or whatever, that would be incredible if they could pull that off today.
And then, these ideas get reinvented. I mean, whatever happened to Walt's old House of Tomorrow? That should be done again, Come on, that was great for 1950. Let's do one for 2050,
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes to what I wanted to ask you. What do you think of the current crop of Imagineering attractions that have been coming out lately? Because I'll go ahead and say it. They haven't been the biggest hits across the board. There have been some shining moments and some surprising moments. I don't know if you've been to the Adventureland Treehouse at Disneyland, that reimagined. That feels like old school Imagineering when you're walking through it. It's such a joy to just go through that treehouse now. But I'm curious, how do you view things, and how do you, from being on the inside and developing things like Epcot, how do you view the current state of Imagineering from an outsider's perspective?
Well, if we go back for a minute to Spaceship Earth, that literally was, except for Ray's story, that was kind of recycled. Okay, it was recycled from the 39 World's Fair. It was recycled from Carousel of Progress. So I'm not saying that in a negative way, but this whole idea of repetition, something that all the old guys used to talk about, repetition with variation. Look at our movies. We keep making the same old movies. How many times did we make Cleopatra? How many times did we make? Right? And the idea is we repeat it, but we should vary it, and we hope it gets better. And you just mentioned the treehouse. I think it's a perfect example of repetition with variation. Sometimes being original can be dangerous because you're not building on 500 years of trial and error on the idea. And in the movies, sometimes we make terrible mistakes, but we do that all the time, remake after remake after remake. Unfortunately, many times the remakes are not as good as the original, and that's a design problem. But in the treehouse that you just mentioned, you felt that it was perhaps an improvement, And that's what we're after. We're after recycling the idea and making it better and improving upon it. And there's plenty of ideas out there. I mean, thousands of good ideas. Sometimes when you start to invent something from scratch originally, you don't have the ammunition of those hundreds of years of experience that went before you. And so that's I think that let's talk a lot. I mean, and look at the great painters who keep painting John the Baptist over and over and over again. Hopefully, he gets a little better, So I don't have any problem with remakes at all. In fact, I think that in the seed of a remake is possibly a seed of greatness as we move forward.
Well, I've got to invoke Muppet Vision. That's probably the best example, because before Muppet Vision, there were 3D movies around. It's not a new concept.
Mm-hmm.
But what Dad and Jim Henson managed to bring was just pure magic, lightning in a bottle. You saw how many people were so emotional last week, singing Rainbow Connection outside the theater. What kind of experience invokes that kind of emotions for essentially a 3-minute 3D movie?
Mm-hmm. That was a fun time because Jim was such a wonderful, wonderful man, a pleasure, and his thinking was always so clear. On my first interview, Disney had sort of suggested that he used me for that show, and so we had our first meeting, and it was kind of in a very friendly way. Well, what do you know about puppets? And my answer was nothing. Absolutely. And the next thing I knew, I had a plane ticket and I was flown back to New York and spent a week or two in his Muppet factory back there, learning everything that I could possibly learn in a short period of time. And I came back, and what I realized was that everything that we normally do in a film set was out of scale with the puppets. I mean, so I said to Jim, well, let's just do some flat artwork. And he said, oh, John, I've been doing that all my life. He said, no, I want a real set. I want a real 3-dimensional set. And so here, I go into the staff shop. Nothing worked. All the columns were the wrong size. I had to get guys starting to sculpt Corinthian capitals again, at 1/3 their normal size. Ironwork didn't work. So we basically reinvented architecture for Jim at a new scale, at a scale that worked for the Muppets. And I just flashed on a funny story. Maybe it's floating around. You may have heard it, but that Jim had a situation where Kermit was carrying an apple, and the apple was supposed to be shot by an archer with an arrow. And if you've heard it, the first arrow knocked the apple right out of his hand. Now, this has got to be $1 million hand, right? This is the hand that created Kermit, right? And he's got this archer shooting arrows in his hand. And he looks at the video and he says, I didn't quite like that shot. Let's try it again. So 3 or 4 times they do this arrow shot. He said later, the moral of that story is be sure you hire a good archer. If you go back to our discussion about art departments, there's some parallels there. Be sure you hire some good people who can do the job well. So, fun stuff. And I saw him 2 or 3 days before he passed away. What a crime! He was sitting in a pit at MGM Studios there, and said, "Oh, John, let's have a drink tonight." And that was the last I ever saw him. It was a real tragedy. Mm. Great man, really great man.
You don't get many people like that.
Mm-mm.
And a few days later, you got a special package in the mail. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh yeah, that was in the in 3D Muppet. There's that parade of soldiers, if you recall, and they made about, the puppet shop must have made about 10 or 15 of those soldiers to parade, maybe 20, and So time goes forward, and my father passes away, and I'm in San Diego, and I come running back, to attend to all the things. He'd been sick for a while, so it wasn't a shock. And as I come into my office, there's this huge, big cardboard box. And I'm a little bit upset, and I'm trying to kick it out of the way. And I tell one of my guys, open that thing up. What is it? So opens up the box, and it is one of the little toy soldiers from Jim Henson. And only, I guess, 15 or 20 people ever got them. But it was a beautiful little note from Jim Henson to me, thanking me for our work together. And it arrived on the day that my father passed away. So I've always thought, those two guys are up there causing all kind of trouble. So we named the little soldier. We named him Johnny, and he sits in the museum at Asbury now, so taking care of us.
Oh, that's
awesome. A fantastic story. We're at about the hour mark, and I know we don't want to take up too much more of your time. We are so thankful that you guys were willing to join us and regale us with some of these stories.
It was fun.
This was fantastic. What an honor it was for me, I'll tell you that, to be able to talk to you guys. So thank you so much. If other than the Asbury University site, is there anywhere else we can direct people to go and learn more about your work?
That's for me is the site, and give us suggestions and ideas about what we can do. I'll just close with saying, so far, the university has been very helpful in collecting existing drawings and renderings that were the premonition for many, many, many great narrative worlds in film. Unfortunately, a great many of the drawings have been lost. So my particular focus right now is on an area that I call lost treasures. These drawings have been given away, have been auctioned off, are sitting on people's mantel places around the world. And we're really trying hard to locate a variety. We have little bits and pieces. We have a photograph here and a photograph there. And we're trying to locate the original so that we can at least get some high digital copies, high resolution copies. Cloning is so almost perfect today. I can clone just about any one of these drawings and put it next to the original. And unless you got a microscope, it's hard to tell the difference. So we want to recreate some of these lost treasures. So that's been my latest project right now. Is adding to the collection on reproducible reproductions, prints of these lost drawings. So we have some, like for instance, that were photographed on Ectochrome that have just been turning purple, by the hour. And fortunately, we've been able to restore those, and now we have some good examples of those. So
that's amazing.
Nice. So if anybody's Aunt Mabel has a fantastic illustration sitting above her fireplace, please let us let John know.
We're not going to take it away. We just want to photograph it.
But thank you again. Thank you. And John D has Grand and Miraculous on YouTube. Be sure to go check out that channel. It is going to be taking off, I'm sure, because like I said, it's a refreshing way to deal with the deep dives into the attractions. I love that it's live and interactive. So,
and let me just take a moment and thank the three of you, because what you do and what all the other streamers do is just pure magic. You bring the magic to people who can't make it, and it's impossible to understate how important that is. I'm sure you guys will be up on stage in 40 years talking about how you pioneered all this stuff, but I'm grateful for you and for all the folks in chat. I'm happy to be part of this community. I'm just a fan like anyone else. So thank you again for everything you guys do.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think I'm a fan too, because I think all of us are fans, because if I hadn't become friends with you, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to obviously, meet your dad here, which is awesome for all of us on the show. And John Jr., I had the pleasure of seeing your father's window at Walt Disney World just a few weeks ago, which was pretty awesome. So
we do have a family name on Main Street, don't we? That's pretty good. Yeah,
it's awesome.
Still up there. Not covered up yet.
And in closing to what we mentioned earlier and what John is talking about right now, the fact that you are highlighting these magic moments is so important. That's the book John was talking about. I mean, it won't be a book on pages and paper, but it will be an electronic book where these magic moments will be recorded and talked about and preserved for future generations. Incredibly important, I believe. So thank you all for your hard work.
Well, thank you. Like I said, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you guys on the show and be able to talk with you guys. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon.
Sounds great.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
we will say adios, and
Adios.
thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
You in chat.
See you, Chad. Right. Bye. Well, that was amazing.
Wow. Oh, my friend Bob Gurr. I was talking to John Hench, and I passed by Harper Goff when I'm on my way to get coffee.
No,
Come
can you
on.
mention one more name?
It's like, sheesh, man. Talk about, walking right through history. That's, oh man, that's amazing. And great stories, man. And that story of getting the soldier and
He's
the
kicking
note
it
from,
aside. I
it's
had
just,
no idea what it was. That's amazing.
What a great story. But it's one of those things where you look back and you go, man, what was it like to work with all these guys that you hear, these fantastic stories about? It's God. It had to be amazing. It has. I don't know, because I've worked with some amazing people. People that have touched my life and in my career. I can't imagine what it's like when you reach that level of not just the industry itself, but you're actually trailblazing. They were breaking new ground with a lot of the stuff they were doing, and that there's a weird camaraderie that happens when you work close together with people like that, and then to on top of it be doing groundbreaking work where you're like, I don't know, like they were saying, we don't have a Bible, we don't have anywhere to go and look and say, well, how did they do it before? It's like, we have to figure this out. I mean, you guys heard, Bob Gurr, we don't have blueprints of this stuff because we tell the shop, hey, we need a cog that has this many nubs, and it's got to be 8 inches wide. Go make it. There was no blueprints for stuff. It's like,
Right.
I can't imagine how amazing it must have been to be, in, WED or Imagineering and just going through that. That's to look back on it. I mean, he worked on Ghostbusters. If you guys listen to the video, he talks about how they filmed the bottom half of the building is real. The middle section was a painting, and then the top or whatever they actually built the set, and it's like, and they had to put it all together on the film, and how they had to build, okay, so like the apartment doesn't really exist. We had to build the apartment. It's just, gosh, it's amazing to hear those stories. Like I said, when you guys listen to the 5 pillars, you're going to start to look at the movies completely different. Mm-hmm. So be sure to go check that out.
Before we continue on, I think we need to recognize Tamara. She gifted one Park Streamers.
Thank you, Tamara.
So thank
Flags
you.
in the chat. Flags in the chat.
Flags in the chat.
Hurry.
We will get a little confetti going.
Yeah, every time we have these amazing guests, I mean, I learn so much because I know, both of you, I've said this before, you guys are a little more history buffs and you have, a lot of this knowledge, and I kind of come from the other side where I'm kind of soaking it in as we meet these people, and so honored to be able to, interview them and have them on our show. So I don't know, it's pretty amazing. And I love, I think about those things like what we're doing out there, right? We talk about, we're streaming, we're walking around Disneyland, but I think it is so much more. And I've had people say, like, it's something that we and everyone else can look back and watch, right? This space and time,
Mm-hmm.
and those experiences, and you think, okay, the park's the same, but we experience something different every time, right? And we get to share that. And like you were just talking about, with the website, right? And all of that history and all of that knowledge, like sharing that with everyone. I think these things are very special, and it's a piece of history.
Yeah. And I mean, I see the people that, document the rides properly, as I'll put it that way. They document them properly, 4K, good footage, good sound. Me, you're lucky if my gimbal stays, charged the entire time. But the fact that, the way John put it, that, we're writing that book of the experiences at the park, we are, like you say, we're giving people a little snapshot into what this particular day was like at the park.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain experiences that, we may never get to see again because it was like a weird one-off thing that happened, and it doesn't have to be as, groundbreaking as a dragon going up in flames, but there's stuff that happens,
Right.
So, oh man. No, that was fun. I say it every time, with these people that are just so, knowledgeable, have been part of the history. I could listen to them for hours. It's like I'll just sit here like this the whole time if need be. I don't have to do anything. It's like, just talk. Tell me any stories.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, we usually would love to have these guests longer than an hour, but usually we make it, it depends on the person and who we have, especially if we're working with Disney. Usually they keep it to an hour. And if we're lucky to keep them past that, it's awesome. But we would love to, obviously probably have John Jr. and John D back on our show if they're able to come back. So we will definitely be keeping in touch with them. It's like we almost know John D. So we'll be keeping in touch with them, and I'm sure we'll try to bring him back.
Well, I was about to say, I mean, Spaceship Ears, if you want to hop back in, by all means.
Yeah. Oh, he's there.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, he didn't.
Still
he
here.
didn't log
I'm
off,
listening.
so.
I'm like enraptured. I'm like listening. Like,
He's still talking about me. Wow.
how often do I get that? But no, let me just reiterate what I said in chat. This community is what makes it worthwhile. And there are many communities out there for various fandoms and various hobbies and things like that. And not one of them can light a candle to the amount of quality and the amount of love that exists in this community. I'm not trying to blow smoke up everybody in chat because it's a statement of fact that there's something to all of this that brings us all together. And you guys are capturing that. And, you mentioned Danny earlier about capturing a day in the life. Imagine if we had YouTube videos of Disneyland opening in 1955, what that would have been like. See all that.
Amazing.
I would just like a good footage copy of America Sings.
Exactly.
Right? It does amaze me, though, given the fact that, Disneyland opened in 1955, how much footage we have, what we're able to, scrounge up and show. Because as you guys know, I try to show as much of that on my regular podcast when I'm live in the parks, and it's crazy. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I didn't, I know there's a lot of footage, but then I'm like, well, I wonder if I can find this. Oh, and there it is. I found it, and I can show it. But I think it's amazing. And then, like Danny says, you go to something like America Sings, and you're like, I can't find a really good copy of that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but some poor schmuck had to carry the big camcorder, the VHS, and carry it around. So you guys have it easy in comparison. My gosh.
Oh man. Yeah.
But that's one thing I love about what you do, Bob, is that you put up videos right on top of the actual attractions, and you talk about the history and you talk about why these artifacts are so important. So I'm riffing off of you just like anyone else out there.
Thank you.
It's all good stuff.
It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy sharing it. So, and thank you to everyone watching.
Yeah, this has been such a crazy thing. When I started the whole theme park casual, I told you guys I had the idea I'm going to make some T-shirts and do some fun clothing stuff, and then getting involved in the thank you, stop it. But getting involved in the community in the chats was where everything just kind of shifted. It was like, we were coming out of the pandemic, and I had started watching, people just to get through things at times, because out here we didn't have Disneyland for a lot longer than Disney World. So you start watching stuff, and you start, and that's why I probably should do this more when I'm live, is remind people that it's okay, just take a shot in the chat, say hi, because I was that person at one point where it was like, who wants to hear anything that I have to say? I don't know anybody. They don't know me. It's kind of scary to put yourself out there, even just that little bit. But man, once it clicks for you, you realize, like you were saying, what a great community we have. The people in the chat, tremendous people. So many people I consider friends. I've gotten to meet a lot of them in person. Looking forward to meeting more of them. And it just takes one little nudge sometimes. And like I said, I should probably do better to encourage people to just say hi. Just say hi in the chat. But
I was right there with you. It was the height of the pandemic, right in 2020. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in my house. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. Let me see what's on YouTube. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. They're actually in my favorite place in the whole world. So it was great to see that community grow. Of course, there were some pioneers. We won't mention names, but we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's great to see what it's turned out to be today.
Yeah. I'm really glad I told Cordy and Bob that we were going to do a podcast.
I know. Well, when you told me originally, I was like, yeah, I'm in for it. And you're like, I can't do it right now. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was like, well, I'm going to start my channel. You're taking too much time.
That's right. That's right. I did. I remember mentioning that. I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, we did have that
and then
talk.
when we finally got to do it, I was like, we're finally going to do it? Is Cordy going to join us? Is this all his crew? Wow. What are we calling it? You're like, Park Streamers. I'm like, okay, it's generic. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel a little imposter syndrome here because I'm not a streamer, so I'm just like the fourth wheel. Like, wait.
Oh, stop.
Wheel? I guess that's okay.
No, you can't consider yourself now.
Yeah, I suppose. Content creator.
Content
I'm not used to that title.
But you do live stream, and you talk about the parks.
Yes,
so
That's true. I'm thinking about actually getting a gimbal and heading out to. I live up in Seattle, for those who don't know, and heading out to the Space Needle and checking out the original Alweg monorail out there and showing some people all that. Which is
I want to
fun.
see you get on top of the Space Needle.
No. I'm not interested. And I'm not climbing the Mexico Pavilion, and I'm not climbing the Matterhorn. So.
Well, isn't the thing now? It's you basically take your clothes off and climb on top of Tiana's palace.
Oh dear!
Why is that a thing now?
That's a bayou adventure I don't want to see. So, and I don't know if you've advertised it, but you have a very important person coming next time, and we weren't sure if we should go before or after that person, but he's also a good family friend.
Oh, wow! I was saying with the on my way to get coffee, I always walk by Harper Goff working in his office. Jeez.
Well, you get I don't know if it's still on. Is that in 2 weeks? You're going to talk to who I think you're going to talk to?
Yes, it's next week with
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks. Oh, wait,
from
next Wednesday or 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from
do
today.
We not have that post? Oh, do I still have it private?
Yeah, I don't think we've actually announced it yet.
Well, I think we should. Let's go ahead and do that. In fact, I will move it.
Steal your thunder.
No,
Steal your thunder. But yeah.
Wait, I thought I created a link for that already, didn't I? Maybe I didn't. I thought I created a link for it already.
Anyway, let me cover up my mistake and tell you there's going to be a fantastic guest in 2 weeks, and it'll be someone great. Let me just leave it at that.
I don't know. Did you actually create the stream though, Bob? I think I just sent you the thumbnail for us to just kind of put it out there. I don't think we created a stream yet.
I thought I created it because I sent I'll go back. I could have sworn I sent him the link, the guest link already. But I'll go back
I don't see anything. So
give me a moment and I will see. Let's see here. No. Nope, it hasn't been created yet. So, all right. Well,
you're going to hear it here now first. So, all of you guys who are in here, you guys are going to be the first ones to know this. So, we're going to go ahead and announce it. In 2 weeks, on June 30th, the Park Streamers Hangout will welcome the one and only Eddie Sato. If you guys don't know who that is,
you should say it like Elf. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
No, that one is another one of those ones where I'm just like, I can't believe we're going to be actually having him on the show. He designed, if you guys know Knott's Berry Farm, he designed Wacky Soapbox Racers. He is responsible for Main Street in Disneyland Paris.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
which if you haven't been, it's a quite different experience than the other parks.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have not been, and that's the part where I'm just like, I really wish I could get over there.
Well, they have some interior hallways on both sides. Of course, you have the main passageway up to the castle, of course, but they have some interior passageways that are just gorgeous. You know, they really call back to the Main Street vibe. So he did a great job with that.
Yeah, so we will be having him on, and again, it's going to be one of those, well, we'll throw out some talking points, some questions, and then just see where the conversation goes, because it's like, I just want to hear him talk and let him, whatever you want to talk about, let's talk about it. Because, yeah, I mean, I got to hang out with him for a little while at the book signing at Knott's Berry Farm a few weeks ago. Just a great guy, and he's funny and just sharp. does not sugarcoat it. Let's put it that way. It was fun to hear him, making comments.
Oh, we're gonna be talking about this.
Oh yeah, because he showed a little bit of a different possibility, let's just say. So yeah, it'll be fun to hear him. Yeah. So like I said, guys, in 2 weeks we're going to be talking with Eddie Sato, former Imagineer, amazing guy, and I mean, his story is just the coolest. I don't want to give too much away, but basically, he just came up with an idea for an attraction, went over to Knott's Berry Farm and said, "Hey, why don't you guys do this?" And they said, "Well, I don't know, but why don't you go talk to so-and-so?" And he ended up with a job.
Yep. Immediately he ended up with a job. That's what's crazy.
Yeah. And he had no formal training. And that's...
It's all about, of course, you've got to have the talent. That's right. A huge part of it. But there's a huge amount of luck, too, that comes into play.
Yep.
So a lot of these experiences, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, how can I plan my life to get into these experiences? I'm like, no, half of it is just luck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you, Paul. I would love to design a dark ride for Knott's. I have 3 different characters, or if you want to call them IPs, that I would go with. I would giving Woodlander a dark ride. Oh, did I cut out?
You blipped for a second.
Yep.
You're good.
Okay.
Now. Oh, don't say blipped.
Yeah. I shouldn't say that word. That's with the new Thanos thing coming out. So,
yeah. I'd go with Whittles first, and then possibly Peanuts, obviously. But if I could, I'd also try the Alebrijas. I would give them a dark ride and have it flip to Dia de los Muertos during Scary Farm.
That would be cool.
But yeah, I think Whittles gets a dark ride since they're not going to give us back Mystery Lodge
or the original Berry Place or Berry Tales.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would probably be the number one thing to do, is to just basically undo the shooter and put in a proper dark ride in homage to the real Berry Tales.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I never got to answer that question properly. Of course, I made a comment about this big old ball. Yeah, I think, Danny, earlier you asked what my favorite attraction is. Of course, Spaceship Earth is up there, but my two favorites are Rise of the Resistance and Indiana Jones Adventure, and they're just spectacular attractions. I remember taking my dad on Rise a few years ago. Dad, you gotta see this thing, and he hadn't been on a trackless attraction before, where the cars are autonomous. And I swear he was looking down at the car the whole ride to figure out how it was working out. He missed the whole ride. But after I asked him, so Dad, what'd you think? He's like, oh, this is one of the best ever designed. So yeah, he got his.
Indy is my favorite. Indy is my favorite.
Yeah. And I think I told you guys a story about Indy when Tony was kind enough to invite us on the attraction. Did I tell you this story? Before it opened to the public. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but suffice to say that certain things weren't working on the car, and it was a nice little small world type ride through Indiana Jones. And my mother, who was alive at the time, she loved it. She thought, "Oh, this is great. It's nice and calm, and it was beautiful inside." No, it's not working. Went through a second time, same problem happened, and finally the third time the hydraulics kicked in, and my mother never minced words. She said, "Well, I liked it better the first two times."
And Tony Baxter's all,
I know. But he laughed, Yeah. We forget how many glitches and how much birthing pains a lot of these attractions go through when they're first released.
Indy still has the birth
pains. I know. But especially when they first open, it's very easy for someone to go up and create a blog article about, oh, this had so many problems. But you got to realize all the moving parts that have to align for it to work.
I was muted. I was saying every time I go on Tiana's, I have a problem.
Yeah.
It's early days.
Oh, early days. Sorry.
All right. So what are the other topics that we wanted to cover, Bob?
Okay. So we have the Piston Peak National Park builds. We also have the Disneyland. What is it? It's the future expansion plans for Disneyland Resort. So we have those to talk about. We also have the Halloween 2025. It's Disneyland at Halloween 2025 for Oogie Boogie Bash dates and more. And we also have the test track presented by General Motors reopening date. So what do you guys want to tackle first?
Let's go Disneyland since we're out here. Let's talk a little bit about Disneyland because we do have Monsters Inc. that has been announced as closing in 2026. We don't have a hard date yet. The thing that I find interesting about that one is I've always said that Monsters Inc. is probably the best of the ride re-themes because it works. It's in a weird spot in the park. I get it, but the ride itself, it works. It was a fine changeover from that incredible superstar limo. But yeah, for me, it was the best of the re-themes. And that's the one they're getting rid of.
Yeah. Well, and then, Danny and I talked about this, and I'm not sure if, John, if you and I talked about this last week on the phone, but, this picture right here is the Esplanade, and it's showing the new walkway that's going over the monorail into the new Esplanade. Obviously, you can see Avatar Land is over here, and What's interesting though is that, of course, this is just concept art. But I was telling Danny, and I think we might have talked about this, John. But the monorail right now goes around through Monsters Inc. But it's gonna have to either go around Avatar Land and the Esplanade, or it's gonna have to go through it somehow. And I have a feeling that it might not go through it. I have a feeling it might go around. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing and what their plan is for that one.
Seems like it'd be way more expensive to make it go around, though.
True.
That's just my. I could be completely wrong because of what they have planned for Avatar. But yeah, having to adjust that track, it seems like they would have to, because you'd have to be putting. They'd either have to circle all of California Adventure, or new pylons have to go in places where you don't have really much room to put pylons.
Right.
Because you'd have to cut back across down, because you'd have to get back before. You could probably go past Buena Vista Street, but you got to be back before. You got to have it back in line with before you get to Soarin'.
True.
So,
now, if they don't, they could always push back, because, what we were talking about before. And, I should bring up a Google map. So let me do that real quick, and I'm going to stop sharing.
I could see them making it tighter so that it stays outside of DCA until it gets to Buena Vista Street. That could work, because the monorail can make some decently tight turns. So they could swoop it and, have it do a quick little S curve and catch the bridge on Buena Vista Street, and then you're fine.
Right.
Do you see it entering the park before Avengers Campus, or going around Avengers Campus?
It would actually cut into the Esplanade rather than going into the park.
Oh, I see. So earlier.
Yeah. So let me show you a Google map that. Oops, that's not.
Yeah, because going into the park, where are you putting all those pylons? Because they're only about like 50, 60 feet apart. So
plus, you would essentially be arguably wrecking both lands, because now you have a monorail going through them. So.
Right. Well, and this is the current monorail as it goes through Monsters Inc. right here, right? So it's kind of going right through that entranceway for Monsters Inc. Now, from what we're hearing is that this whole area right here is going to be demolished, and it's going to be part of Avatar Land. Everything here on before the Harbor Boulevard, so the old pickup and drop off is going to be taken away. So basically this whole area down through here, Hollywoodland and over, this is all going to be part of the Avatar. Oops, sorry about that. Part of the Avatar Land. And they're talking about getting rid of not just Monsters Inc., and they haven't mentioned this yet, but you've got, the buildings for Philhar Magic. You've got the other hangars that are here. You've got the Hyperion Theater, which is right here. So this whole area, I have a feeling it's all going to be part of Avatar Land. Obviously, they've announced that the new ride for Avatar Land, and I mentioned this before on my streams, that they've got to do it like the Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai, with the screens and the boat moving, and apparently that's what they're going to do. So it's going to take up a big chunk and a big part of the park. So yeah, they're going to have to do something. Whether they keep, obviously it's cheaper for them to keep the monorail going through if they can, or they're going to have to bring it through where it kind of reroutes here down and then gets back in. But that's...
Yeah, we'll have to see what they decide on.
Given how much Disney likes to spend money, I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah, it seems like the easiest thing would be to reroute it so that it goes, cuts into the Esplanade area and then rejoins, at Buena Vista Street.
Correct.
But
they won't reroute a monorail, but sure, let's get rid of a whole Rivers of America, shall we?
Yeah. Well, then.
Yeah, but don't forget, we always, poo with the river, but they monetize what's coming, so that's going to help to cover the cost going forward. So true. I don't like it, but that's the accountanteering that they're doing.
Yep. Of course, they announced the new Coco Land. And so if you look at the map again, we'll zoom out here. So let's see here. So this whole area is the plaza area, but there's talk that it could be either backstage, this area right here, where they already have the floats, buildings and everything like that. And by the way, you probably didn't notice, but there is a long time ago, right here in, I think it's right here in this area.
Yeah, it looks like it's about right there.
Yeah, right about here. There's the stage that they kind of have. Well, it was meant to be an entrance to another land if they expanded DCA out, and they never did. So it could be that will be the entrance, or it depends on how you're looking at it. It could be that this is the entrance right here, where the floats and everything come out. And because if you look at this picture, it shows, in the picture I'm going to show you right now, it shows the roller coaster. And let's see here. You can see that roller coaster kind of in the background here. Mm-hmm. So it's next to the roller coaster, but where exactly this entrance is going to be, we will have to wait and find out. But of course, this is just concept art, and we know how concept art is with Disney.
Yeah. My guess would be that it's going to be right next to where the parade gates are, and the parade, because once they get all the infrastructure done with the Eastern Gateway and everything, the streets that surround DCA, the service streets, those are going to become a little less important. So they can probably tighten those up, because they're going to own the streets right there next to DCA and downtown Disney, all that. So they might be able to reroute things a little bit differently.
Yeah, so they did buy Disneyland Drive here. So they'll have this whole street, which eventually they want to connect the parks.
Right. I was going to say that too, because eventually that parking lot that you're looking at right there, that's eventually going to go into, becoming more resort area rather than just parking.
Yeah. So this street right here, which is Disneyland Drive, will cease to exist, and that way they're able to bring Disneyland over to this parking lot, and they'll be able to bring DCA over into the Simba parking lot. The other one's Stitch. But yeah, this is all going with this street right here, and this street right here, Magic Way. That is all bought by Disneyland as well. So those are two of the streets that they actually bought from the city of Anaheim. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting once they start building that whole area.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's going to be interesting. They're going to get started a little bit sooner than they had originally announced on Coco. I think Coco wasn't set to break ground until 27, I think, and they moved it up to 26 or something.
Oh, I thought it was. Let me go back to it, but I thought it was 2026.
Was it always 26? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought they had moved it up a little bit.
Yeah, it says Mike and Sully to the Rescue will close in early 2026, and they were supposed to break ground in 2026, but most likely they'll probably demolish Monsters Inc. and then move on.
I have a question I'm deeply curious about.
Yes.
So with all of these changes happening, they're bringing Avatar, they're bringing Coco, they're expanding Avengers Campus. Arguably, you're kind of getting away from the notion of a California theme park. Do you think that they're going to potentially rename the park at any point, or do you think they'll maintain that naming and make it work?
My guess is when Avatar opens, that's when we're going to get a new name of the park.
You think so?
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, look at Disneyland, Paris. They actually have, the Walt Disney Studios. Well, they're changing that, right? So
Yep.
I have a feeling they're going to change it as well. It makes sense because it's not a California adventure anymore, unless California is part of Avatar Land. Just kidding.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, everything up until Avatar, you could kind of see a little bit of a, inkling of California in everything. And Orange Grove 55 always puts, has a good argument for every single area, how it ties to California in some way, but in a, fanciful Disney, IP, laden type of way. But it does have that, essence of something in California. So I get it, but I think once Avatar opens, at that point you got to kind of say it's not really California adventure anymore.
It's hard to sell that one, that's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. But Reply by Mail says Disneyland has 0 open land and they make it work. Walt Disney World has nothing but open land and the story of Walt's classics. I will say, though, Reply by Mail, they've only developed 49% of the actual land that they have in Anaheim. So there's 51% of open land. It's just kind of hidden in plain sight. So if you know where to look, then you know where they're going to be doing things and building things. So there's a lot to do still. And it's funny because when Danny and we went to a luncheon, it was about 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And we were there with, the president at the time, Ken Potrock. And he said, yes, we only developed 49%. And Danny and I were looking at each other like, what? 49%? Where's the other 51%? But
yeah, but if you're going to add on to Disneyland without it, becoming, a complete, like appendage to the park, they're going to have to cut into backstage beyond Toontown.
Right.
That's basically the only area they have left that would connect it to the current Disneyland footprint. Everything else would be like this weird little thing sticking off the side over where Bayou Country is now. And I think that's the plan eventually, is possibly have that be where you would cross into the area near the hotels, if that's going to become part of Disneyland. But we don't know if that's necessarily where they're going anymore. It could be that all the areas surrounding the hotels becomes its own new little, boutique style park that has, these specialized attractions and, but we'll have to see. Disneyland is just a different animal than the other resorts. It's not like Disney World. It's the locals, kind of rule the roost over here. So if they were to do a boutique park, they got to be careful and don't end up with a Galactic Star Cruiser situation where things are priced to the point to where it's not sustainable.
Right.
So,
well,
like I said, that's just me talking, because I remember in the map that they showed us for when they were proposing Disneyland Forward, the Pixar Place Hotel was marked as, oh God, was it? It was like a themed hotel. I thought I had the papers right here. But it was marked as some sort of like attraction style hotel thing, which led me to believe that they were going to attempt another Galactic Star Cruiser type of thing, which they may have possibly backed off of.
And they could. One of the things that we didn't talk about, and Haunted Mermaid mentioned, they're going to have to build another lot for the employees. So this whole area, well, let me show you real quick. So this is Garden Walk right here. In Garden Walk, Disney's rumored to be buying or purchasing this land. If they do, this will become the new Downtown Disney, so that they can actually get rid of our Downtown Disney and they can continue building the theme park there. Also, if you notice over here, Disney owns this whole lot area right here. And actually, I'm going to zoom in. So they own all this property right here, plus they own this parking lot, and I believe this lot as well, which Haunted Mermaid, I think they're using for employees right now. This is where they're going to be building the massive new structure for the parking lot. And I think it'll be pretty amazing once they get that going. They really need to do that before they build the whole new Esplanade. And then, of course, down here, if they do take over Downtown Disney, this is the famed and much hated Toy Story. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say hated? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean that casual. Sorry about that. But yeah, this is the Toy Story, parking lot, and this is rumored to become nothing but shops, hotels, entertainment areas, and all that stuff. So, and this is a huge land in itself. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and if that's what it ends up becoming. Of course,
Yeah. And one thing we do need to remember, Disneyland Forward was touted as a 30-year plan.
20 to 40.
Yeah. So well, I've split the difference. But yeah, it's so these things are going to be happening in waves and sections, and the only stuff you can count on is things that they have literally announced. Anything, purchasing Garden Walk and turning a new downtown Disney, that's still, to be determined, because they need to, finalize all those sort of things. So I wouldn't get yourself worked into a tizzy about any of this until you start seeing actual plans, So if, right now, the only thing that you could get upset at is possibly that your beloved Monsters Inc. attraction is going away, because that much we do know.
Oh, excuse me. Hunter Mermaid's corrected me. It's beloved Toy Story lot.
For the VIPs, perhaps it is beloved, because you can see Cordy.
VIPs.
You can see the
Like last time I parked there, I had a bad experience.
I've had to not even be able to park over there because at the end of the night, it adds like 20 to 30 minutes to my, night, just because I have to wait for the buses and, to get over there. And then my, 3-mile trek to my lone car out in who knows where in that lot. I don't get the door-to-door service like you do, Cordy.
Too funny.
I want to know what they're going to do about all the businesses that are still there. You got Denny's there, you got the Howard Johnsons and all that. So,
well, that was one of the bones of contention that from the original announcement of that Eastern Gateway. When they made the announcement, they just basically kind of said, we don't care about this. We didn't talk to any of the businesses, and the businesses, they basically revolted and went to the city and said, what the heck? Mm-hmm. And so the city kind of had to talk to Disney, and Disney had to back off because it was going to be a very public and not very quiet backlash happening. So this next time when they were, proposing Disneyland Forward, they discussed things and showed these businesses that they're not basically walling, everybody off of the streets and then funneling them directly into Disneyland. And so the businesses have since backed off their animosity toward the plans, and we'll still have the foot traffic, from the surrounding hotels. So the hotels will still be able to walk in from Harbor Boulevard along those streets, along the sidewalks there. So hopefully
everybody wants a Denny's in their theme park. Come on. Haven't you ever craving some chicken and waffles in the middle of your day? Come on.
Moons over my hammy sandwich.
There's nothing like getting a good grand slam in Batu.
Food would be better. Oh, did I say that?
Yikes. Let's not go too far, Bob. Come on.
Oh, sorry.
Not that Denny's isn't fantastic. I love Denny's breakfast.
Well, I like Denny's breakfast too. They usually have a really good menu. So,
yeah. And where else can you order a Moons Over My Hammy?
Right.
All right. So moving on, we're going to...
Not a sponsor. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Piston Peak next.
Sure, let's bring that up.
Shall we? Because this one, oh man, it's really tough to...
Thorn in our side.
It's tough to even give them the benefit of the doubt at this point for me. It's you're fundamentally changing what this land is, and at that point you are fundamentally changing the Magic Kingdom. So and you guys know I love the Grizzly Peak area. I love Cars Land. I think this looks like it's going to be a fantastic blend of the two. It is just in the completely wrong spot. That's my only problem with it. I think the ride will probably be fantastic. I just really wish they would have picked, decided to do a Cars Land over in Hollywood Studios which also needs capacity. And this would have been the kind of thing that most fans probably would have been like, hooray, it's fantastic. They're adding something, and it's going to be really cool because it's, the national park look and all that. I think it would have been fantastic. But even with the Autobahn Woodlore character that they came up with, as much as I would love to be able to give them props, I'm still, nope, you're not going to get me with the nostalgia. You're not going to get me with that little cute, nod to the Humphrey Bear and Ranger Woodlore cartoons. Still not on board with this one. Sorry.
Cordy, what about you?
I mean, I know for me, it's more of, I understand it, right? What everybody's, it shouldn't happen. I've never been there. So I don't have, that, I guess, connection in that way. But just knowing our rivers of America and everything, it's just, it doesn't feel right.
John?
Yeah, what you said. No, it looks great. I totally agree with Danny. It looks great. I think it'll be fun to go visit. It's just in the wrong place. And I'm curious if this is truly like an off-roading kind of attraction. It rains a lot in Florida, so I have no idea how well that attraction will do with all the rain that they have every day. But we'll find out.
Right. Well, apparently the dirt is not going to be real dirt, obviously.
Yeah.
But who knows what it's going to be like? Imagine this is basically going to be like Indiana Jones in a smaller vehicle outdoors.
Right. And we know how Test Track does with all the rain. So.
Right.
Yep.
Ariel and I got to experience the rain just.
Well, I was going to say Bob knows the rain intimately.
Yeah, it was not a lot of fun. I don't know. I'm really concerned and upset because they're getting rid of the Rivers of America, and when Eddie Soto has shown us how, hey, you can still keep this, and he's done a couple different versions of that. By the way, we're going to discuss in a couple weeks of them. But I just don't understand why they felt the need to get rid of Tom Sawyer's Island and the whole Rivers of America just to build this car thing that, to me, it's like, okay, so let's see. I'm going to look out from the Haunted Mansion and see Cars Land? What? Huh? What? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I don't know.
Sightlines.
Sightlines, right?
Sightlines.
It's all about sightlines. And I just don't see how this is going to really, I don't know. We haven't seen a finished product, right? So who knows? It might be better than I think it's going to be. But to me, the rides that they've shown have just been mediocre. One's for kids, one's for adults, or the whole family. And I just think it's just going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be anything amazing. And I'm really sad to see that they're destroying, this whole area. Now, granted, regardless of, you nostalgia and all that stuff, it's something that I think that is synonymous with the whole, Disneyland's, right? In Disneyland Paris, you also have the Rivers of America. You have it here at Disneyland, of course, and they will never get rid of it here at Disneyland. If they do, I'm sure they'll be held to pay. But I just don't see why they need to do it in Walt Disney World, especially when, as John had mentioned earlier, there's plenty of land to build on, and there's no need to do this. I mean, there's so much land in Walt Disney World. They could have expanded, and they're calling it expansion, but to me, an expansion is expanding the land. They're reusing the same type of land to make this attraction. So to me, they're not really, they're not doing what they could to save this area or to expand.
Yeah, it's more like a net neutral, I suppose. You're tearing out so much stuff to get 2 new rides.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
my
sure
biggest
parts of it'll work. It's just, we're going to think about what we lost. And of course, I don't want to come across as the curmudgeon, who says, they shouldn't change anything, because Walt himself said, the park will always be changing. But the question then becomes, how much of a change did he anticipate? Did he anticipate yanking out the entire river and the entire island? I don't know.
That's the thing. And here's the map of Walt Disney World. So basically, they're ripping out the whole entire, Pirates Island or Tom Sawyer's Island and the whole Rivers of America, this whole area here. And yet they have all this land, out here that they could, now granted, they're going to put Villains Land in up here in this whole area. So I get that. But why couldn't they move it to this area? I mean, it just seems like they had plenty of space and room to do what they want to do, but instead they're just like, well, we can just get rid of this. Who cares about the Liberty Bell and Tom Sawyer's Island and Rivers of America?
Yeah, I've heard different stories that one way or another they have to redo that entire area, even if they weren't gonna put in cars there, that the rivers literally has to be rebuilt because of some issue with it or something like that. There's something that is going to require them to have to basically tear it out, redo it, and basically reconstruct it so that it's up to code or whatever. Basically there's an issue there. And I've heard that other area that's green, up above, beyond Big Thunder, that some of that is actually not usable. Because of the way the land is, and what they would have to do to it is basically, completely cost prohibitive, because they would have to, rip it out, fill it in with, proper soil or whatever it is that they need in order to be able to build on it the way they want to. So we could be that we just don't know all the logistics that are involved. That being said, it's still a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will be the curmudgeon. There are certain things that you can adjust, but you don't rip out and throw in a Cars ride on. There's ways of going about things that honors Walt's desire for change, but also his desire to preserve certain things from the past that he felt were worthy of preserving and passing on to the next generation.
Mm-hmm. And Danny has a good point. Not many people know this, but Magic Kingdom is actually the second level. You have a whole level underneath, which has all the utilidors and all that. So when the park first opened, they didn't intend on adding Pirates of the Caribbean, because they figured, you're in Florida, why do you need to go to the Caribbean? So there was so much backlash from guests that they really wanted the Pirates ride there. And they had to kind of squeeze it into a weird little angled corner where it is now in the Magic Kingdom, because of the fact that it was on the second level and you had the utilidors underneath it. That's one of the reasons it has such an awkward ending, is because they had to squeeze that whole building in that corner of the park. So yeah, it looks like it might fit on the 2D map, but like Danny says, there's a whole lot of nuance and detail that goes into it.
So
yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I will remain, steadfast in thinking it's a bad idea, but I don't think anybody cares what I say. So
I care.
But you know what I mean. I don't think Disney cares what I say.
True. That's why we're going to have Cordy go speak to Disney for us.
I'll do it.
See? She'll do it.
I'll do it.
She'll do it.
No, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be out. Look right here. This is what he said. Listen.
Yes.
Now
So
go
we
do what he
get
said.
Changes now.
You do not want me to sick Spaceship Ears and Theme Park Casual and Very Place 28 on you, okay? So here we go.
We're going to get our pitchforks in the morning.
Yeah.
We'll assemble at 6 a.m. At the
You do
torture.
not want TPC ranting about you on Instagram.
That's a long rant.
It's a long rant.
That's
Oh,
so funny.
boy.
Well,
All right, well,
I think it's about time for questions, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we can take a couple of questions. It's getting a little bit late.
Before we talk about questions, Mitch mentioned that Carla's birthday is tomorrow, so I just want to wish Carla a happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Carla.
birthday.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I want to say thank you again to Tammy for giving us that Park Streamers Hangout membership. So thank you very much. We didn't get to this part, and I don't know if you could talk about it, Spaceship Ears, but Reply by Mail had asked, can you talk about Mappo? And I think he was referring to your dad, but are you able to talk about Mappo at all?
I'm not really the best person to talk about that. I don't know to what extent the question is. Probably that would be better for me to do some. I'll ask him offline and I'll come back. But I can promise to come back if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, did I see that it's Renato's birthday too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Renato.
birthday, Renato.
Happy
85th
birthday.
birthday. That's amazing. So happy birthday. That's awesome. All right. What questions, comments, or sarcastic remarks do you guys have for the park streamers and John?
Rhoda when is the next in-park PSH stream? We're hoping for possibly next Wednesday. And we were planning to do a 1,000 subscriber celebration, and that may be the 1,000 and 2,000 subscriber celebration with the rate things are going right now.
Yay.
No, never, Barbara. You guys
What'd
don't
you
ever
say?
have any sarcastic remarks.
I do. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Paul did say that Mapo was the manufacturing side of WED.
Yep.
Walt wasn't fond of the name because it sounded like a cereal. That's right.
My dad was more on the design side. I think you'll need to get someone like Bob or someone who is more involved on the engineering side. By the way, went to Retro Magic a couple of years ago where they had a bunch of Imagineers up on stage, and they had a wonderful hour and a half long discussion about all the hardcore engineering they had to do back in the day. So if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff, I recommend it.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Trish is asking you a question, Spaceship Ears.
Ooh.
100 words or less. What's
a lot of
your
words.
grandfather like? Talented, we know, but what else?
So I need to repeat a story. I don't think Dad told it tonight, but my grandfather had what is known as kind of hyperphantasia, where he could visually see things in his head, and he got his, this might go beyond 100 words, forgive me. He got his start by violin lessons. He just played violin lessons. And to be honest, he was so sick and tired of it that he ended up imagining three-dimensional shapes in his head. And that's how he kept himself busy during his violin lessons, where every half hour he would go off every 5 minutes and suddenly draw something and go back to his violin lessons.
Wow.
But he got so good at visualizing that stuff in his head. My favorite story about him is that he, when he went on airplane business trips, if you haven't seen his work, he loves widescreen, huge mural type of artworks. So when he was on an airplane or in tight, cramped corners, he was miserable because he wanted to draw big things, right? So what he did in his head to compensate is that he envisioned a scene and he divided up the scene in a grid-like format. And he pulled out a stack of 8.5 by 11 letter papers, and he would start upper right cell, just draw that square. Then the next one, and he just, like a Xerox copier, he just drew the whole scene. He got off the plane and went home. He taped it all up, and I'll be damned if all the lines didn't exactly line up, and it was just perfect. So we have a few examples of his work where it's just nothing but 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper taped together. Not many people can pull that off, and it's something that I love to hear about.
Well, that's amazing.
Very cool.
Good story.
So yeah, people with that talent are amazing folks. I don't know how they keep it all in their head, but it's part of living life is that you need to get it out and you need to draw. So one thing Dad says, and I'll echo, go draw. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. I can barely draw stick figures, Sometimes I wonder if I was adopted, but thankfully the art gene carried on with my daughter, so I know I wasn't. But just go draw. You've got to exercise that part of your mind, and it doesn't matter if you're good or not. Getting that creativeness out is very healthy for you and important.
Wow. That is cool.
Mitch
there's
asks.
an interesting question from Mitch.
Yeah.
I don't think he worked on that. Do you guys know who did that? I'm not sure who did that off the top of my head.
Oh, the
can't
Grand
think of it.
Canyon?
Yeah, the big Grand Canyon mural in the back. I have to look that up. Maybe I'll have an episode on it. But he did. My grandfather did do the. It's kind of famous. The. Do you guys remember the Diamond Horseshoe Saloon in World Magic Kingdom, which is the equivalent of our Golden Horseshoe Saloon? He did the famous backdrop where you can see kind of the other side of the stage, but guests and performers are on the backdrop. That's one thing my grandfather drew.
Okay, it looks like it was designed and art directed by Claude Coates and painted by Delmer J. Yoakum.
There we go.
There you go.
Nice.
That's what I like to do. I like to get those names out there because that's table stakes for talking about these attractions.
Sure. I don't see any other questions. You guys?
I gotta say hi to Debbie. I see Debbie in the chat. Hi, Debbie.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
All right then, kids. We got one from reply by mail real quick. How would y'all fix Rivers of America? You know what? We will save that one for next time because we'll be talking to Eddie Sato, and he had a fantastic idea, and I'm sure at least I hope he'll go into it a little bit with us. So we'll come up with lots of ideas on our next one, I think. So be sure to join us on the next Park Streamers Hangout in 2 weeks from tonight.
Hopefully it involves Western River Expedition or Thunder Mesa or any of those old ideas.
So
we should probably talk about Grand and Miraculous because that's an amazing site.
Definitely.
So guys, if you haven't gone to YouTube to check out Grand and Miraculous, please go check it out. It's an amazing channel. You're going to be on tomorrow night, right? So what are you?
Not tomorrow night. I'm taking a break because of you lovely people. So I'll be back next week.
Never mind.
No worries. I'll be back next week with a attraction to be announced. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good.
All right, very cool. And if one of our mods can drop the link for Grand and Miraculous into the chat so everybody can just quickly click on it and go and subscribe.
Yeah, and if you have a favorite attraction you'd love to see featured, please come, comment, drop a comment, drop a chat. I'll prioritize it. Bob has one.
I have a few.
Yes.
I'm going to throw America Sings in.
Oh, yes, of course. America Sings. Love America Sings.
You already did.
And Carousel.
Space,
maybe it'll be a two-parter. Maybe we'll do Carousel and America Sings.
You almost have to, right? I mean, because the one was the succession of the other. So. Barbara Duncan says, gives me a chance to catch up on the episodes I missed while traveling. There you go. Very cool.
All right, kids. I think that's going to do it for us for tonight. Thank you again to John DeCuir Jr. and John D. DeCuir for joining us. It was a fantastic discussion. Like I said, I hope we can have you guys on again soon. That would be amazing to be able to hear more stories. And I think we're going to, we'll be back in 2 weeks with Eddie Sato. And hopefully next week we'll be doing an in-park hangout to celebrate 1,000 subscribers, possibly 2,000 subscribers. We shall see. It's moving quick right now, guys. I don't even know what's happening. But thank you all for subscribing.
10. Come on.
So we already mentioned Grand and Miraculous. Be sure to go check out Grand and Miraculous on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and check out the current videos that are up there. He'll be back in next Tuesday with another episode with a to-be-named attraction. But in the meantime, Cordy, would you be so kind as to let everybody know where they can find you on social media and when you will be live next.
You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, and Discord. At this time, what do I have? I have a Sunday scheduled, so we'll see how.
All righty. And our good friend Bob, Berry Place 28. Let everybody know where they can find you and why they won't find you streaming possibly until next. Oh, wait, no, you're going to be doing some home streams.
I am.
Yeah.
So for those of you who did not know, I actually had elbow and hand surgery last Friday, hence why you probably see this little I actually am wearing a cast right now, which I can only raise it so high. I'm fighting for the pain right now, so I wanted to be on tonight's show because it was important to be here with John Jr. and obviously Spaceship Ears. And so thank you for having me on tonight, obviously. But you guys can catch me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. And I am going to do a home stream Wednesday night with Ariel. We're going to do trivia night. It's going to be Fantasyland trivia and Star Wars trivia. So that's what we're going to be doing. And that's the only thing I have planned for this week, just because I'm really taking it easy. And the next week, I will be back hopefully on Wednesday with Danny and Cordy in the parks. Probably not going to go on very many rides, but I'll be walking around. And by that time, I'll have I'm hoping to have my cast and stitches out by then. And then hopefully I can do some other streams if possible that next week from home as well. So with that, let's turn it over to Theme Park Casual.
All right. And you guys can find me on YouTube, X, and Instagram, all of them at Theme Park Casual. I will be live in the parks planning on Thursday. I don't know exactly what time, so make sure you have the bell clicked and be ready for possibly a special time for the live stream. That's Thursday, not our usual Wednesday stream. So, and then hopefully next week will be and Saturday. Saturday, I might do a live stream, but I am hoping to get to the parks to support Goofy Guy's Adventures. He is doing a fundraising challenge for his Chalk Walk team. He is part of Team Park Streamers. So for $20, you can make Larry do another lap on the canoes around the rivers of America. So let's make sure and send him around at least 15, 20 times, guys.
Yes, I agree. He's going to be doing a lot. Like you said, he should have upped those donations because that is a lot of. And by the way, we are now up to what is it for the park streamers? I believe we are at 19,470. Is that where we're at? I think so. Wait, is it higher? Yes.
470 at 19,470. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Wow.
That's
We should
amazing.
all take a bow.
Great job. I'll take a bow for you. And I will take a bow and thank you guys for a wonderful evening. I appreciate all the love and support you guys have given us. It was great to be here. Happy to come back anytime. Bob, thank you so much for suffering through, and I'm very happy that you were here despite your elbow pain.
Thank you.
But yeah, we managed to write another page in the book we talked about, so be happy about that. Hopefully many more to come.
Yeah. All right. Well, you kids, dreamers, and jammers have a great rest of the night, and we will see you guys in the parks. Have a great night, everybody.